He didn't notice the first time, or at least, he didn't let himself. The kitchen was dim in the mornings, light leaking in through the frosted glass, and he often moved through it half asleep, brushing fingertips across surfaces out of habit more than awareness. And so when he saw the drawer to the left of the sink pulled out just slightly, less than an inch, barely enough to notice, he assumed it hadn't been closed properly the night before, a careless moment, maybe, or one of those unconscious habits you never quite catch yourself in. He nudged it shut with his knee, made coffee, and forgot about it. That should have been the end of it. But the next morning, a different drawer was ajar. This one was under the counter, where he kept nothing of consequence, a few rubber bands, batteries, an old corkscrew he never used, and yet it was open in the same way, not flung out, not misaligned, just enough to suggest interruption, a kind of gentle shift, like someone had pulled it open an inch and then stopped, neither in urgency nor indecision, but in deliberate restraint, and this time he paused, stood in the center of the kitchen for a few seconds longer than usual, letting the silence settle around him before reaching down to push the drawer closed with slow, steady pressure, half expecting to feel resistance, though of course there was none. After that, he began to check. Not obsessively, not at first, but with increasing attention, as the pattern became undeniable. Each night, he would go to sleep with every drawer shut, each one pressed in with a faint click of the wood against the frame, all aligned, silent, clean, and each morning, one would be open, a different one every time, never repeating, never skipped, and never enough to cause alarm on its own, only just enough to suggest a system at work, something too consistent to be accidental and too restrained to be invasive. He began documenting it, taking photos before bed, making notes in a small notebook he kept on the kitchen table, even placing a strip of masking tape across one of the drawers to see if it would be disturbed, and it was, though carefully, almost respectfully, peeled back and folded over the side, not torn, not removed, just altered enough to show that whatever was doing this knew exactly how much was too much. He told no one. Not because he was afraid of sounding paranoid, though he was, but because the act of speaking about it felt like it might change the rules, might shift the game in a way he wasn't prepared for, and besides, there was no real threat, no damage, nothing taken or added, only movement, only that quiet nightly gesture, repeated with precision, as though someone, somewhere, was waiting to see how long it would take him to ask why. Long before the final drawer had been opened, he began to notice the way his body responded to the kitchen differently, not through fear or hesitation, but through a slower pace, a subtle caution in the way he placed his feet on the tile floor, a kind of reverence for a room that had once been functional and unconscious and now had become a space of deliberate stillness, where every object felt watched, every shadow felt measured, and every morning walk into it carried the same unspoken question, which one now, a question he never said aloud, never even thought clearly, but which nevertheless pulsed beneath the surface of his mind as he stood before the cabinets and let his gaze fall not where he wanted, but where the room led him. He knew by then that it wasn't random, that the drawers were not responding to his hands or his patterns of use, but to something else entirely, something quieter, deeper, something that had noticed how he noticed, and that was now matching him gesture for gesture, pace for pace, as if the room itself had become a mirror, not of his movements, but of his attention, and that the more carefully he tracked what changed, the more precisely that change unfolded, never exceeding what he could endure. Never pushing him into panic, but simply presenting, again and again, one more drawer, slightly open, slightly different, but always undeniably next. By the 10th morning, the rhythm had become so precise that he no longer checked the drawers in sequence. He simply stood in the doorway and waited for his eyes to find the one that no longer belonged to the night before, and they always did, without effort, without search, as though the act of seeing had become a form of communication, not initiated by him, but allowed by whatever was orchestrating the pattern, a presence that revealed nothing directly, but left its trace in silence, in symmetry, in the gentle insistence of repetition. What began to trouble him was not the drawers themselves, nor the way they opened, but the awareness that the sequence was finite, and that he was approaching its end, that 12 was not just a number of compartments but a number of steps, and that with each morning he moved one notch closer to something for which there was no clear expectation, only the sense that the act of counting itself had been the point all along, that he had been brought into this process not to understand it, but to complete it, and that completion would not require comprehension, only presence, his presence. When the 12th morning came, there was no doubt left in him, no question of whether the pattern would hold or what he might find. There was only the certainty that the last drawer, the narrow one beneath the far counter that he never used, would be fully open, not nudged, not teased, but wide and waiting, and that inside, there would be something, not shocking, not grotesque, just real, just placed, just meant for him. And when he entered the kitchen, he saw it exactly as he had expected. The drawer fully extended, the light falling across the smooth object inside, pale, unfamiliar, unexplainable, but not strange, not foreign, only quietly unmistakable in its intention. He did not touch it. He did not speak. He simply stood still. And in that stillness came the understanding that the drawers had never been about what they held, but about what they changed, that each movement, each opening, had altered not the kitchen, but the boundaries of waiting, and now, with the sequence finished, the drawers would no longer need to move, because whatever had used them had finished its approach, and now he was the one who would begin to move, not through space, but through the kind of awareness that starts with a drawer and ends in a silence too complete to be called peace.